Welcome back to Amazing People. This is the second round of interviewing with Dr. Farid Gharagozloo, and we're going to talk today about whatever comes from our minds. It's going to be a lot less structured, a lot less topic-oriented than the last time, and we're just going to kind of gab in a more informal way. So tell me about your greatest experience as a doctor. What do you love about what you do?
Wow. Well, that's a very complex question, obviously, but I can tell you probably the best way to answer that is to tell you a story. And I think
More stories. All right.
More stories
this is
are
the
best.
fourth story, I think.
Exactly. And the story has to do with when I was applying to medical school back in the 1980s. This was actually an interesting time because apparently it was one of the most difficult times to get into medical school and so forth. And I'm sure people who are trying to go to medical school these days find that it's not so easy. And then it was exceptionally difficult. And if you were lucky enough to get an interview and get a chance to talk to somebody, you would really want to make the best of that few minutes that you had. And then people would all ask all kinds of questions during these interviews. And I remember when I went to school at Johns Hopkins, and in that interview, the person asked me, so you want to help humanity, don't you? And he was very surprised when I said, no, that's not the reason I want to go to medical school. And it shocks you to hear that, but the truth is that, and I said, if I wanted to help humanity, there would be so many other ways, better ways to help humanity than being a physician. That's not the truth. The truth is, the reason I want to be a physician, and it's been true for all my career, is because I love what I do. And if I love what I do, then when I do it for someone, that love translates into doing the best possible job for them, taking care of them as a human, as opposed to a disease, which is how it's done in many places. And believe it or not, after the initial shock, the interviewer actually got a smile on his face, and he said, this is the type of person we want to have at Johns Hopkins. So I don't know if my grades were good enough, but it's certainly the passion that I had, and then I have carried along. So so when you ask me what is the greatest in medicine, the greatest is that I can do a job and never think of it as a job, and be able to get that type of fulfillment. Now, whether you're a physician, whether you're whatever it is that you do in life, if you love everything about it, then you're not looking forward to the end of the day. You're looking forward to more of the same.
Not living for the weekends, the way a lot of people do.
Exactly.
And this is an example of where passion and love come through. And were your grades good enough? Like on the...
They were good, but I can tell you that that discussion elevated them to a whole different level.
Right, and it's an unusual answer to begin with because people are very aware, interviewers, interviewees, interviewees especially, are aware of the right thing to say. Mm-hmm. I'm here for the values of this organization, and I'm here for da-da-da-da-da-da. And the people who are hearing these answers, on some level they may know it's not necessarily true, because in almost no case is it actually true, but this is what on paper is supposed to be said, because that's the system that's been created, and we all know how to abide by it. So when you've broken it in a way and also worked within it at a higher level, I think that's fantastic.
Well, thank you. And I think that that's actually a very important point about life in general. You don't need to be a rebel. You can be a free thinker. You can be an honest thinker, work within life, understand the situation, have that situational awareness that so many people talk about without even knowing sometimes what it means.
Just by telling the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, not blurting out certain things that are just, you really shouldn't say, but by speaking to a higher truth, which is what you did.
Absolutely. And I think that liberates you all your life. And I think that now, after so many years, when I sit with my patients, they see the truth. They see that honesty. They see that that I love what I do. I really do. Every day I want to be better at what I do. And I love the fact that what I do makes somebody better, heals them, and helps them. But if I came at this purely from that helping people kind of thing, then to be honest, that would be much more effective if I were a priest or if I were so many other things. And that would be that's an important self-realization. You got to know yourself.
Because there's a lot of self-focus you got to have, studying the stuff, making sure that your hands work and
Sure.
everything.
Yeah, if you want to help people but you really don't love what you do, as you said, you're not going to be very effective.
Right. So how do we translate this love what you do thing into how people live? The number one reason people don't love what they do and do what they don't love or what they may hate is because they need to earn a living. Mm-hmm. Right? Now, we live in America in 2018, and it's very possible to carve out a living in today in unconventional ways and so forth by doing what you love, but in a lot of cases you just don't make the same money. Had you chose to become a priest, you wouldn't make the same money as you do as a surgeon. So how does one reconcile the lifestyle benefits versus the love benefit?
Well, honestly, I don't think it's about the money, and I don't think it's about the lifestyle. I think it's about that inner peace, that fulfillment that you get. You can be fulfilled in doing anything. After all, these are all artificially created things. Whether you're a physician, you're an X, Y, or Z, this is people created that in a society, and we all have roles in it. So you don't have to think, I have to be the President of the United States to be the most fulfilled person. Or you don't have to think that if I'm doing whatever you people may consider a lesser job, that I am not fulfilled. That's the fallacy of the whole thing. What should be is that every day I don't say, do I really want to go to work today?
So being president is one thing, but not having a great income is another thing. That's the big reason. So for me, for example, I love tennis a lot. And I had these other attractive options in terms of going to college, and I had a whole bunch of Ivy Leaguers and business people in my family. Had I taken the tennis route and not made it as a top pro, I wouldn't be making money. And that was the thinking that I had when I was a teenager. So what did I do? With calculus in my mind, I thought, this is what I need to do. I need to focus on this path because this is where I'm going to make money. Mm-hmm. And now you have me now kind of throwing that away a little bit and focusing on tennis as much as I possibly can because this is my love, my passion, my fulfillment more than anything. So what advice, how do you reconcile this thing? It's a tough choice.
Well, it's not really. I tell you, it's think about this, and I don't want our discussion to be one where we're sort of very idealistic. So it's certainly if you're not hungry, you really don't know what it feels to be hungry. And,
you mean literally hungry?
Literally, meaning if you don't have food on your plate, it's easy to say, well, you should do X, Y, and Z. So it shouldn't be like that. But so certainly one has to be successful. But the problem is money is a means to an end. And that end is fulfillment, self-respect, pride, things of that nature. Now, everyone says, you can't buy happiness with money. Money brings a lot of happiness, believe me. So I am not one to say you shouldn't have money. Not that I have it, but the bottom line is that's part of our life. That's how you get things in this world. However, the key is that is absolutely secondary. So if someone starts thinking, I want to do X, Y, and Z for the financial aspects, whatever that is, it's a mistake. You will be successful financially when you do what you love and you're successful being fulfilled in what you do. That's the point. You can't start with the financial and end in it. It needs to be the other way around. And there is really, if you look at all the people who have been successful in the history of the world, their success came not by saying, gee, I'm going to be a millionaire or a billionaire or whatever. It came by saying, I'm going to do what I love. I'm going to make something new. I'm going to create something. And then things come. And to be honest with you, that's really the secret of being successful. If you start just thinking about the financial piece, no one will be successful.
That's the thing, though. People are kind of trained to think about the financial thing to begin with, pressure from parents and so on.
Yes.
Right? Like, let's take me and let's rewrite my life. Let's say I decided I want to be a pro tennis player from the first time I picked up a racket,
Right.
which my instincts may have told me to, but I knew wasn't feasible. And so I just completely stopped thinking about it. Oh, it's secondary. I can do that on the weekends and so on. If I just played and played and played and played and played. And let's say that I didn't make it as a top pro. Let's just say I'm some number, whatever, 100 or 1,000 in the world who's not making too much, or anything really. I could have found part-time ways of making good income, perhaps, right? I could have found, acclimated myself to making a little bit less money, but still doing what I love, I suppose, but more creative ways. I may have started this show earlier because I'm thinking, gee, I need to make some money. Hey, I've got good ideas. Maybe I can start a show. Instead of going to college and so forth, which detracted from that.
Right.
Because it carved out a path for me.
Sure.
That I wasn't necessarily, on board with. But I did. So, yeah, and I could be a much better tennis player and even have more money today had I taken that path, either from tennis or from finding other creative endeavors earlier.
Well, I think it's reasonable to say all that. I would challenge one thing, and the much better aspect. The key to understanding and having peace in life, at least at my point in my life, and I think it's been a very good life, is that I don't think that any specific person, organization, culture, et cetera, should determine what is success. Success should be what you see as success. And it's very important to have that concept. And that means that for every person, success is defined differently. The fallacy of the way of thinking that most people have is success is defined by society, and that's why so many people live their lives unfulfilled. They either blame a parent, they blame a teacher, they blame society. I mean, so much of the unhappiness of life has to do with the fact that people do things against their will. And then they see their own failure because of these rules that were put in front of them and so forth. Now, I'm not, again, advocating being a rebel or antisocial, but the point is that if you put this in the right perspective, society wants what? Society wants members that are beneficial to that society, right? It doesn't matter what you do. You bring up this whole society by whatever it is that you do. That is the way we are. That's in our genes. So to do that,
by being what you really are,
by being fulfilled at what you are,
you will have a sort of deeper impact through what you do, irrespective of the specific thing that you're doing.
Exactly.
Like what you said about the love transfers into your patients.
Absolutely. And I think that's an important thing to think about and to really to digest. So much of what we may call pathology in our society is inflicted on our humans, on our people. So many people feel that they are not successful, right? So many people feel that they're failures. So many people feel on and on and on and on because of this artificial thing that they see as a block to their moving forward. And I think if we allowed people to be liberated, and that's the beauty of America, by the way. What makes America great is the concept that you can do whatever you want to do within the realms of the social norm, right? And in America, there is no limit. And the reason the other places in this world have not gotten to this level is that the rules and the regulations are stifling to the people.
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So that's it. So be liberated in your own mind, be liberated in your society, be liberated in your family, and then you are a valuable member of any of those groups. And then you're very happy too.
Yeah.
There we are.
Well, the number one thing people want from society is really to just be accepted and respected. And a lot of the other deviancies and problems that occur come because they don't have that, or because they don't feel that, whatever it may be. And then they act out in certain ways in order to get some attention, negative attention a lot of the time.
Yeah, but the acceptance cannot be, just like we were talking money, similar thing. Acceptance can't be the starting point. If you start with wanting to be accepted, you will never be accepted, or you will you will do artificial things.
Yeah, that's a very
you
good,
won't be
good
real.
distinction. Yeah,
you need to be you. You need to understand that your job as part of being in this world is to be a good person and to contribute. And the crazy thing about it is, and when you do your job, you'll be happier and you'll be more accepted. Just like if you do your job, you'll be more successful and no one has to worry about financial concerns. That's the key. I really think that's such a simple concept, but such a powerful concept. If you're a good member of the society, or a good, whatever it is that you are, if you're good and you're benevolent and you do it for the right reasons, everything falls into place.
So speaking of doing things for the right reason, everyone thinks that they're right, for one thing, especially, and ones who do things that we all consider bad also. I think that it's hard to know what's right and what's not right, but I think that the best way you can figure out from your own self is by judging it from your heart.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree.
Because you feel something, and that feeling can guide you.
I absolutely agree. And I think I would say that everyone also know when they're wrong.
Deep down.
Deep down,
Yeah.
in their heart, the
Yeah.
very place that you said.
Yeah.
You know. I mean, even the most evil humans who have ever existed knew deep down they were evil.
Yeah.
They never portrayed it, they didn't show it, because knowing what's wrong is part of our genes. You can't change nature. Mm-hmm. This is us. This is who we are. Even the animals that are not as probably evolved from an intellectual standpoint know the right and wrong. They know that. Now, if you have a more intellectual capacity, you learn it more and you kind of get more evolved. But the bottom line is everybody knows when it's wrong. And the key is...
I need to clarify.
Sure.
You've already said deep down, and I just want to say that there's so many layers on top that though you may feel it somewhere, how that actually translates in real life, that's another story. There's a total other story. It's very difficult to undo those layers of thinking and defensiveness and self-preservation and so forth.
Yes, absolutely. You said it. I mean, because what happens is what's in the heart, by the time it comes to the outside, there are many filters and so forth. And unfortunately, that's what translates into evil, right? But the issue is, but that also tells you that every human has the capacity to be good. And I think that the way to break down those levels, even in the most evil, is to break them down one by one with the final goal of uncovering the good in their heart. Mm-hmm. And that is fantastic. And for the person who's trying to do that, it's also fulfilling and liberating and brings so much happiness.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a simple thing. I'm amazed when there's somebody who's panhandling. You go to the intersection and the guy has a sign, he's coming to get some money. The person who says, he's just going to use that to go buy X, Y, and Z, or support a drug habit, whatever. So many things are said, right? I think that person actually loses out in this whole thing.
The person who decides not to give?
Exactly. You don't have to give, but you shouldn't do all of that.
Right.
But a person who says, it takes a lot. Whatever the reason is, here's a person in the heat, in the afternoon sun, panhandling, taking his pride, putting it behind him, all of those things that it takes to do that. If I take $1 and hand it to him, I am reaching into his heart and seeing the good in him, no matter why this is happening. And when you do that, your heart lights up. And that is humanity. So whether it is with that, whether it is with anything else in life, whether it's at your job. So imagine if everybody really thought about this actively. And every day that they went into work, they say, I'm going to make this a better experience for the person who sits across from me. Whether it's in a bank, whether it's in a physician's office, whether it's an operating room, whatever. You wouldn't want to leave your job because you're so happy, because that's what we need. Now, unfortunately, if you just go for acceptance without that, now you're setting yourself up for a downward spiral.
Yeah. So I want to go back to the homeless person example. And I believe in figuring out what's the best way to help them. I went to India, and when you go to India, in certain cities, there's so many homeless people. If you can't give, you can't give to everybody.
Yes.
And it is true that at certain points, like they've carved out like where they're going to be, and they do have habits and so forth. And and it could incentivize them not to get employment, and they're pimping rings in which certain people pimp out kids and so forth to get money. And that makes the situation more complex.
Yes.
It makes it much. I'm all about generosity and so forth, and reaching into people's hearts, but these situations on earth are much more complex than that. So that's why it's hard to know what to do, and sometimes operating from the heart hurts.
Yes.
It can hurt the situation.
Yeah. Yes. No, I think you're absolutely right. Now, these are similar but different concepts. The issue is, I think that in a situation where a one-on-one doesn't work because it's such a large-scale problem, you still have to reach into your own heart. You still have to say, how do I give? It may not be that I give $1 to the hundreds of thousands of people who are panhandling. It's impossible, I understand. But how do I give to these people? How do I show that kindness? Because again, it is a selfish thing. This is not altruistic. This is not that you're being a benevolent human being, because you're getting a lot out of that experience. So how do I do that? So either you can do it individually, or you do it on a larger scale to the best that you can. Understanding that there's only so much you can do. We have this, as humans, we have this odd concept that we are more important than we really are. I am one of billions of people on this earth. Whether I'm here today and not here today makes no difference. That's liberating. Say, okay, I'm going to do my best. That's the best I can do. But I'm coming from a good place. Instead of saying, I'm going to do my best, which means I don't do anything, but I come from a bad place. You see? I think that's the difference. The person who says, I can't help this because there are so many people, what can I do? That person loses in that equation. The person who says, I really want to help.
Because it feels good.
Because it feels good.
And I think that you end up getting into more levels of personal strength by reaching into your own self in order to give, and strength is very important.
Yeah.
You mentioned in our previous interview the best way to serve humanity is to make yourself the best fighting machine that you can, so that you can do what you do. You talked about just a few minutes ago loving your job, right? So if you reach into your own self and it hurts a little bit, but you develop strength from it and you develop love from it, that speaks to the two most important things that will help you feel good, feel strong, and feel loving, are two of the greatest things to feel, and to actually really help in a in whatever you're doing.
Yes. You asked me about medicine, surgery earlier, about some of the greatest things and so forth. And I don't know if I can talk about those, but the thing is, I can tell you the secret that I have found in 20-some years of doing surgery is that the person who sits across from me and wants me to do whatever it is that I do to help them in medicine deserves my expertise. They don't deserve my love. They don't want my love. They are coming to me to do a certain job and to do it the best possible way and to do it for them as if I was doing it for me. That's what they want. And if you delude yourself into thinking, I really love my patients, but I'm going to do a halfway surgery, no good. That doesn't work. So your patients, and we have discussed this before, they're very important, but if you are a good surgeon, that's what they want more than you holding their hand and loving them, because they can get that love other places. Now, if you're a good surgeon and loving, fantastic. But the direction has to be the correct direction. And so that's an important issue, no matter what it is you do. No matter what it is you do. And I'm amazed that we spend so much time, all of us as humans, excusing ourselves, explaining ourselves, talking about things, as opposed to doing the right thing in the first place.
Instead of making the wrong choice, not from the heart, and then spending a lot of time defending it, thinking of clever ways to cover it up and so forth. Yeah.
Yes.
And this speaks to a deeper truth. I think it was George Washington, and who knows if he actually said this, but let's assume he did, that honesty is the best policy. And I want to get into a fictional situation and see what lessons we can learn from it.
Sure.
Do you watch Game of Thrones?
I have seen it, yes.
The whole thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So let me lay out the scene. And this is a great spoiler alert. This is from the end of season 7. And season 8 has not come out yet. We have the meeting of the minds of the leaders. Mm-hmm. And you have Jon Snow and Daenerys on one hand. And you have Cersei on the other hand. Cersei is the evil, horrible queen. Jon Snow and Daenerys are the sort of good, benevolent rulers of their kingdom. And they have a common enemy in the north, which is the White Walkers, these dead, ghost-like things, which if they end up coming into the land they live in, everyone's going to die. And in this meeting, they need to figure out how to band together in order to fight the common enemy. Mm-hmm. So Cersei agrees to work with them. And she's very skillful about this. She denies it at first, which would be her first reaction, because both Jon Snow and Daenerys want to overthrow her. They're sworn enemies. And she's so clever, she knows that it's not going to look real if she just agrees to help them. So she denies it. She says, no, I refuse to work with you. I'm not working with you. I only care about protecting myself. I'll move to an island. I'll be fine. And then someone goes and talks to her, and then she puts her hand on her stomach to indicate, just to subtly indicate that she has a baby. She's a clever mastermind genius. Mm-hmm. And then she comes out saying, I will fight with you. We will put everything aside for now. We'll resume our war when the whole situation's over. And we'll beat the common enemy together. And we're all happy and resolved. And then what happens? We find out a few minutes later, and for the viewer, it feels good. You're like, finally, no more war. It's good. They're gonna fight the dead White Walkers who are the real enemy. And we find out a few minutes later that she lied. Mm-hmm. She's lulling them into a false sense of security. She's making them feel like she's going to work with them. And while they charge up north to fight the White Walkers, she's going to take over their land, Daenerys' land in the south. That's her plan. Now, we need to discuss this, but I want to lay out something else as well. Jaime Lannister, who is her incestuous lover brother, and her commander of her armies, who's very benevolent and good at heart, although a little bit egoistic. when he finds out about this, do you remember what he does?
No. Yeah, go ahead, tell me.
He leaves. And she has her giant security guard there to kind of make him think that he's going to get stopped. And Jamie says to Cersei, "You're not going to kill me." And then she says, "Nobody walks away from me." And then he looks at her and he sees her blink or something. And he says, "I don't believe you." And he just walks away, and he just bumps shoulders with the security guard as he leaves. And she chases after him and doesn't get him. And he leaves. Now that's the end of season 7. Now let's talk about honesty, right? When it comes to business and so forth. Cersei gets a competitive advantage in this war against Daenerys and Jon Snow by lying to them, right? As a result, though, she loses her army. Who's going to invade the South now, right? These competitive advantages you get with dishonesty, I believe they last only as long as they can last, until an honest person comes around, like Jamie, finds out it's wrong, and then abandons that leader.
You're absolutely right. I totally agree. I think unfortunately the again, being human, some of these things are more instinctive. It's almost like you have this reflex that doesn't go up to your brain. It goes through the spinal cord type of thing. I mean, if you tap on my knee, I don't think about it, my leg will jump. So there is a reflex in humanity to be dishonest. There's no question about it. We are flawed beings.
Yeah.
You got to believe that. You got to understand it. You got to accept it. But we have the capacity to fight the flaws. Even the Mother Teresa, with all due respect to Mother Teresa, I would say, and I'm not talking about her specifically, was a flawed being. The reason she is a saint is she did not do the reflex. Things went through her brain, and she clarified her life of those things.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what you got to do. Life is a constant struggle. And I think that, again, this is not trying to be a better person or anything like this. It's just the secret of a better life. If one understands that there is not a single human being in this world who felt good about putting one over the other one. I do not believe that. I may be wrong. Maybe I live in a fantasy. I don't think so. I do not believe that when someone does something bad or puts one over another person in business or anything else, that, again, in that heart, they know it. And it doesn't feel good. But they were not strong enough to fight the urge to be bad.
Right.
And I think that is key. That's key. It's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing. And it's the most selfish thing. You would think the other way is selfish.
Right.
It's not.
This is truly in service of you, making you feel good and so forth.
And when you feel good, you're a better member of this world.
Yeah.
That's the secret. Now, if everybody was like that, what an amazing world this would be, as they say.
Right. Now, as we sit today, right, do you believe in the trajectory of the world and humanity going positively in respect to this, or negatively, or neutral? We're going to stay the same. What's your feeling on that?
Without a doubt, it is the most positive trajectory that could be. You have to understand that we are evolving beings. That's the other realization. What I am today, I should not be tomorrow, right? Humanity has changed. And it's not just about accomplishments. It's not like, we went to the moon, or we're going to the stars, or we're doing robotic surgery, whereas before we didn't do these things. No. It's just that all of our things that we call accomplishments are because we said the status quo is not acceptable and we need to evolve. And that's what makes us human, right? Animals evolve too, but they don't evolve as fast. And so we have short-circuited nature's evolution, right? With this. It's amazing. This is what has given us the chance to. Nature will evolve too, right? In millions of years, all these beings on Earth have changed, but pretty slowly. Humans, because of this, go faster, at least based on our standards, faster, right?
So you said because of this, and I'll just go back to this example from Game of Thrones. Cersei, who did all this dishonest, bad stuff, says to Jaime, who's honest, "You were always the least clever of our family." And which is true. He's just more good-hearted, innocent, and so forth. And she is leagues smarter than anybody.
Mm-hmm.
That's here. And
Yes.
that's why it needs to be informed by the heart.
Yes.
And sometimes the more intelligent you are, depending which direction it goes in. Intelligence with someone who has an amazing heart, that's a truly amazing thing.
Mm-hmm.
Intelligence when you're like Cersei is a horrible and destructive thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, actually, I would say that I wouldn't call it intelligence. I would call it something else.
Cleverness, maybe?
Clever.
Yeah.
Shrewd, etc., because the really smart person does think with their heart.
Mm.
And again, that because I think that at the end of the day, the end result is what determines how intelligent it was, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think that, so when you ask me, do I think it's positive? Absolutely, it's positive. And I think that what we need to do is not get distracted by some of the flaws of humanity. People like, oh my goodness, we have nuclear weapons. Oh my goodness, we have all these things that could destroy us. Yes, we have all of that. And maybe 200 years ago, all we had are bows and arrows and muskets. We couldn't kill each other as badly, but also we couldn't live as well.
Right.
So you got to put it in perspective, and because we are capable of both.
Yeah.
But what you got to do is, just like we are capable of lots of bad things. You and I could be very bad people, but we fight it. And we need to fight that. And if we keep fighting it, then those things get pushed aside. You know, you and I were talking about JFK a little bit earlier. You know, what people don't appreciate about John Kennedy is or not all, everyone, there are many who do appreciate this, is his belief in the positive trajectory of humanity. You know? And you know, they talk Camelot, they talk about how 1960 election changed the world. It was his ideas, right? And the fact that he believed that he was born, or he was very much part of a world where one leader could destroy the whole world, and he didn't want to be that leader, right? And I think one of the tragedies of humanity is that someone like John Kennedy could not live longer, because he would have changed this world. He really would have. And there are many others like that. And so, but it doesn't have to be John Kennedy. It can be Jay Shaw, who can then take up that and move on. You know, I mean, in a big battle, I mean, you're like movies and everything, I see. So, you know, the army will be successful if whenever the leader falls, another leader rises.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it is.
Mm-hmm. And I think the nice thing about John F. Kennedy is that his speeches are on camera.
Mm-hmm.
I think that gives it a lasting permanence, that people can not only read the words like they may read from Lincoln or Washington, but hear it, see how he delivered it, look at the person delivering it. Mm-hmm. I think that gives it a lot of power. And when people allow that to inspire them, that's what helps change this entire thing, and you move beyond base level responses, and you operate more from the heart and the mind, and the mind in service of the heart, and so forth.
I agree. Now, the cynic would think that people like that are naive, right? So many people accuse him and many others who thought that way or who think that way to be naive. I think that's, the cynics are wrong, and he was enlightened. He
Mm-hmm.
wasn't naive.
Mm-hmm.
He understood. And I don't know what brought that understanding, but I think it's very important that we in our own lives kind of see that.
Yeah.
You know, certainly in my career, that's a very important thing. It's a very important thing to face the truth, Jay. Very important. Not easy, painful, but you got to face it head on. Don't move around it. Don't dance around it, because it is the most liberating thing to know the truth. The truth, I mean, it sounds like a cliche, but believe me, we spend most of our lives dancing around the truth. What a waste of time.
Well, in acting school, we in the Meisner Technique, as I learned it, we were taught to speak our emotion. Just speak it. Just get to the heart of it. No complication, no nothing. I like you. I love you. You're looking at me. Like things like that, to just cut to the very core of everything. And then when you bring that into an acting scene, you have that emotion going, and then you have all the words and the dialogue and the movements and so forth. But it's the emotion that really brings people to watch a movie. Movies don't look like contracts. It's not as boring as a contract, which is totally mind-based and important, obviously, for its purpose. But people go to movies to feel something inside themselves that happens through the actor, and then it happens inside of them. And that's why I believe in the power of art, and my acting teacher taught me that.
No?
And John F. Kennedy was an artist in that sense, because he could have delivered the same speech as really boring.
Certainly. No, I totally understand that. I think it's multifactorial. It's not just one thing. But really, the truth, I mean, it's an amazing thing. It's most people don't appreciate that part of being a good surgeon, or what I think is, or striving to be an excellent surgeon, is living the truth. People don't understand that. You have so many demons, you know. It's amazing. As a physician, since we were talking about what I do, as a physician, you are doing something to another person, and there is this power inside you to try to make sense out of some of your own inadequacies. Yeah. For example, you want to do an operation, but you just don't have the right visualization, just don't have the right circumstance. And you know that operation cannot be done perfectly. You know it. And then so many times you, because of, again, we're flawed beings, you make sense out of this and you do your best. Well, your best, as they say, is not good enough, because your best is not about you. Your best is for that human being. So you really didn't do your best. You made sense out of things, right? And what results are complications, problems, etc., etc. So somebody pays the price. When you make sense out of things, somebody pays the price. But the price should be paid by you. So you learn this the hard way, that when you get to that point where you can't reach that structure, where you don't have the exposure, where you can't do the perfect operation, you know what you do? You say, stop. Stop, because I can't do this that the person wanted me to do. And face the truth. Close up the abdomen, close the chest, do whatever it is without hurting the person more, and face the truth and come up with an answer for the true problem.
Example of this not happening is in the Titanic. Captain Smith kept going. Despite what people told him, he had a hubris that he could do it.
Yes.
And I'm all about self-belief and thinking that you can do it, but there are certain things that when a landscape, you need to know you can do it in the context of reality.
Yes.
And not just he paid the price, the many people on the ship paid the price, and the many people back home.
Yes, that's the point. I don't care if you think you can do it, and if it's you're climbing some rock, you can try to do it as much as you want, and you fall and you're done. That's your business.
Right.
But when you are in command of a ship with 2,200 souls,
yeah,
You can't be like that.
Yeah.
When you're a surgeon operating on a human being, this is not about you. It's about them. And you know, I'm not trying to be someone who says, I know the answers. I have learned these answers. And I have patients, and I'm being very frank and honest. There are patients who have paid the price of my inexperience in 20-some years of doing surgery. And I think of them every single day. I get goosebumps saying it. I think of all the mistakes. Not because I'm a good man, but because I'm trying to be an honest man. And if I didn't think of that, my next patient would not benefit from that.
Right, right. And that's one of the benefits. People say don't have regrets, which I'm all about from a certain standpoint. From a certain standpoint of not digging into the past and thinking about negative things, knowing that, you know, you did as much as you could and so forth. But for me, with my father, who just died last month, I have a lot of regrets in terms of spending more time and so forth. And I mean, a lot of things, really. And in one sense, I don't regret it, right? I did what I could, given what I knew then, what I had then, who I was then, and so forth. And in one sense, I live for now. Here we are. Mm-hmm. Hey, humanity is good. So we move forward.
Right.
In one sense. In the other sense, I also think about my dad every day. And I think back, hey, if I had done this back then, he was in New Jersey, I live in Florida, and I was trying to get him to move here, and I think if I'd called all these people, hospital, nursing homes and all that to get him a place here, but his health just ended up going down and he died. But I think if I had acted sooner a year ago, if I had enough strength to just lift him and bring him here, right? Just drive him here and then figure it out. If I had done that, where would we be today? And I think about that. And the thing is, one of my friends said, unfortunate that it had to come through something so serious with my dad dying. And I said, well, that's the only way I really would have learned it. Because if I were just playing a video game where nothing mattered, I wouldn't be thinking about it. To your point about really learning from mistakes, I think you can use regret as a positive tool, and that can maybe absolve you of the burden and the agony of having it.
Absolutely.
Live it, pass it forward. That's
Absolutely.
Life.
Absolutely. And you know, I would also tell you that the agony is nothing bad, because that's part of life. I think that we, again, as these animals, we think that, you know, it's a funny thing to me that you think that you're born and everything should be just fine. It just seems so totally misunderstanding life when you think like that. Life is a series of challenges, series of painful things, series of things that you will think about. And I don't think one should be afraid of the regrets. The regrets are what life experiences are. You didn't know. If you knew, you would have been different. You didn't know. But the fact that you didn't know does not mean you dismiss it, because that's the typical, that's again that synapsing through the spinal cord, that's the reflex. No, you should internalize the pain. You should understand the pain. You should look into its face and say, I will be different the next time. You know? And that's really part of being, again, a strong professional. Whatever it is you do, whatever it is. You know, you're working in customer service. Person comes with a problem. The first thing is, it's your problem, right? I mean, that's what they call customer service these days, right? Whatever it is. You go to an airline counter and you know, I mean, it's amazing to me that a few weeks ago I was flying and people are lining up to get on the plane, and then there's this lady, young woman with a baby, and she's like, hey, forget the name of the airline, but hey, you bumped me off my last flight, and you said I was going to be on this flight, and I'm here with a baby and all of these things, and I'm trying to go from Florida to New Jersey, where I live. I have to be on this plane. It's been hours sitting in it, you know, and their thing is, this is your problem. You see, that is how a bad organization works. That's how a bad society works. A bad everything works, right? But that is the easy way out. The difficult way is always taking the problem and making it your problem and fixing it, which is what she wanted. So our society, unfortunately, doesn't pay enough attention to these things. As a surgeon, it's amazing. I deal with cancer and so forth. You know what the patients want me to say?
You're okay.
Yeah. It's like, I'll take care of it.
Oh, yeah.
You're okay, but also put, just like Jesus said, put your troubles on my shoulders or in my hand. That's what they want. They don't want a surgeon to talk about how horrible it is and what a bad problem it is and how I'm going to do my best, but you know what, maybe I can't do it because of, oh my Lord, that is terrible. And that's the natural thing. And you got to fight that. You got to fight that. And
fight what?
Fight the natural urge not to sort of protect yourself at the expense of the other person. And so a surgeon needs to say one thing: I'll take care of you. We're going to be fine.
So in the situation with the airline, as well as, say, a cancer patient that you can take out something, but they're metastasized elsewhere, they're going to die and all that. If the airplane is full, right, what's the airline going to do? Similarly, if the patient is full of cancer, what are you going to do?
Okay.
How can you and the airline actually take care of it?
Very good question. So each one of these, actually, the bottom line of it all is the truth. So that woman, airline example, she doesn't want stories. She doesn't want to be the bad person. She doesn't want to have the responsibility. All you got to do is face the truth. You say, the truth is, for whatever reason, we are letting you down. We are. We told you we're going to do this, and we can't do this because there are souls on these seats, right? But also the truth is that we will take care of you. And how do we take care of you? So many different ways. We'll put you up in a hotel. I'll get you a driver.
Yeah,
this is an airline.
Yeah.
You see? Physician, same thing. My patients are intelligent people who know the whole thing. So they feel insulted when I am not honest with them. So we all face difficult problems, but honesty is the way to handle every one of these. Instead of trying to paint some picture for whatever reason, that's not true.
What would you say in that situation?
With a patient?
Yeah.
That I am going to do everything that is possible for as a human to do to deal with the problem. That's it. That's all they want. They don't want me to, paint this rosy picture. Oh, it's fine. Oh, it's this. Oh, no. Because people are smart, they understand, they know, and they want honesty. And it liberates them again. We use this word. I mean, it's an amazing thing. And I find so much of what I do is based on the truth. Just as an example, a week ago, we're known for robotic surgery. People come from all over the country to have this robotic surgery. So we were operating on a person actually who had all of the contents of their abdomen in their chest.
Oh my God.
Pretty complicated, but again, we're known for that operation. So people are coming, imagine,
I just thought there's a cancer somewhere, you take it out.
No, there's much more complicated things. And this one is something that I defined, I've worked on for like 20 years. People know my reputation's on this, that we can do this type of surgery through the abdomen with the robot without going into the chest. So my whole reputation has been built on this, okay? So a patient comes, and we do pretty well at it. And we do hundreds of these a year. One of our patients we're operating on, and it's well outside the boundaries of what I can do. Now I have a situation, right? The situation is, Do I push this to the point where something happens, which could be detrimental to my patient? Or do I face the demon, which is, I can't do this. The way I am now, maybe a year from now I can, maybe 2 years from now I can. Today, I can't. That is a difficult thing to deal with.
From what standpoint of ego, standpoint of not finishing the job? What standpoint?
So just imagine. So the patient has come. Actually, a patient had come from like Oregon or something for surgery across the country. The family is here. You go in and you're like, this can't be done. And I thought it could be done. So either I do it a bad way, which unfortunately is the natural thing for humans. Again, we're flawed beings.
Take a shortcut. If you need to go like this, go like that.
Yeah, and then push the situation so, you're outside the reach of your instruments or your abilities and so forth, and then something bad happens and now it's an emergency and so forth. Or you have to say, we're going to stop. I'm going to go and talk to the family. That is the most difficult discussion you could ever have, my friend.
Okay. You've been around for a while doing this sort of thing. How do you prepare yourself for that?
You don't. The only rule is honesty. If I am that family member and my mother is on that table, I want that guy to come and say, these hands can't do this. This can't do this. So I have to do something else. I want honesty. I don't want a guy to say, I did my best, but your mother died. Because that's not good enough. This is a difference. See, doing your best is not honest. You can do your best, but it has to be within the structure of honesty. You can't make sense out of that. You see, you can't be a surgeon who says, well, this is difficult. I know this is not possible, but I'm going to do my best. And at the end, you're not successful. You didn't do your best. Your best would have been look in that mirror and say, can you do this? If you were on that table and somebody else had your skills, would you want him to push forward or would you want him to stop? I promise you, an honest surgeon would say, I want him to stop. So, you go and you have the difficult discussion. And again, when you're walking out to speak to the family, again, I go through this many times. When you're walking to the family, your thought shouldn't be, oh, this is going to be a really hard discussion, and they're going to be mad at me, and they're going to be like...
And then how can I soften it? How can I, excuse myself a little bit? When you start thinking like that, even the way in which you end up presenting it is much less heartfelt.
Exactly.
And that's really that gets to the core as well of this airline situation and these conversations.
Exactly. So you want to go and you say, everything is coming out of here. It's not going through some filter. It's like, listen, I know that you have respected me and you've come all from across the country for this surgery, and I am known in this world for this surgery, but I can't do this.
Have you gotten yelled at?
Actually, believe it or not, I have been hugged. They have cried, they have loved me, and I have never, in 20-some years of doing this, I have never had someone say, why? They have said, thank you for your honesty.
You know why? You know why that is? Because they trust you with everything.
Well, because the trust comes from the truth. They trust me because they know I am going to tell them absolutely the truth, whether they like it or not. And I'm not running for office. I'm here to do a job.
Yeah.
You see? And the beautiful thing is, that doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen. And then, for example, so I have to say to them, listen, your mother thought that I was going to do this with 6 little holes in their abdomen and it was going to be very minimally invasive and everything. Now I have to open her chest. And I'm not going to open her chest today. We're going to finish. We're going to let her wake up, and I'm going to talk to her because she is the one I am going to be forming this covenant with. So I don't really want to talk to you about deciding or doing anything. I'm just telling you, but I need to talk to her and tell her what this really is, which again, difficult discussion. So you're like, what are you talking? Why didn't you do this? You're a failure. No, they never say that. You think they are going to say that. They never do.
You know what? if you think they're going to say that enough, and then you start like mincing your words, holding things back, being strategic in the way you talk, and you're not speaking from the heart, you're much more likely, as a matter of fact, it actually may be likely that they say all that stuff.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not some sort of magical thing. It's not because you thought it had happened. It's because you thought it, then you started operating on that level.
Yes.
You forgot about the truth, the heart, and so forth, and then there you are getting yelled at. And then it almost looks like magic. Oh, I thought it and it happened.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of emotional stuff that goes on before that happens.
I congratulate you. That's exactly what happens. Because you're worried about you more than your patient. You're worried about you more than your passenger. You're worried about more you. And I tell you, that is the most amazing thing about life, the truth. And you know, just this example, just to complete the circle, when I talked to the lady, she said, I trust you more than anybody in this world. Do whatever you think is appropriate.
That's something.
And then we did it, and she was fine. The difference between the truth and the not truth. Now, the difference is you internalize the pain. You see what I mean? So the regrets, I don't care. Take the responsibility. You know, you have the President of the United States who appears to speak to the country about some difficult problem, right? If the president is truthful and he's not worried about getting reelected or his poll numbers or all this other garbage, the whole country will kiss him and love him and appreciate his service for the country. And they'll be behind him. And that you see that every day.
I will say this though, in a realistic sense though, even if the president operates like that, there's always going to be people who disagree with the vision, and therefore they may feel like they're being told the truth too. They might still think he's lying. They might still.
It's true, and we see that
more
a lot.
or less. I agree with what you're saying, but it doesn't work like that 100%.
Well, you're absolutely right, and I agree with what you just said, and we see that every day these days, you know, with whatever. But I think that part of being a good president in that situation is truly understanding your people, understanding your constituency, your countrymen, and I think that the presidents that would be, you know, again, you may not be able to get everyone, but you will get the large majority to understand. And the reason, the way you go, you know, for example, today, forget your politics, but you see that today we have this pressure in our country where if one side says something, the other side is always criticizing and back and forth, there's no trust.
Yeah, definitely not. Yeah.
And the truth, you know, it's like fake news, stuff like this. That's all because the truth has gotten lost in the spin world of different things. But the smart politician would say, this is a sign of an illness where the cure for the illness is the truth.
So any person who operates with trust and truth in that sense, on a micro sense, helps bring that up, helps elicit that in the people that they're interacting with. For someone to say that they trust you, did she say completely or more than anybody? Something like that.
To be honest, I don't know the exact. Oh, this is actually, you just reminded me. So as I was walking out of the room, she said, you know, I don't know how this is all going to go, but I want you to know that I love you. And I almost didn't know what to do then. That's the power of the truth. You see, people put their lives, they don't even care what it may happen, because we're human, you know? We're not gods.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that the beauty of that is that trust that you put in your surgeon goes a long way to make you feel better after the surgery, goes a long way to make your surgeon do his damnedest to make you better, and goes a long way to getting the absolute result that you're all looking for. Again, all coming from sharing the truth. You know? I mean, if you're in an army and you're going to go face the incredible odds the next day, the thing that's going to make you win that battle is facing the fact that you may die tomorrow. But if you're like, it's going to be okay, you're going to lose the battle.
Mm-hmm.
You see?
Yeah, and if there's a general that's giving you a false sense of comfort, you obviously know that there's something up. You lose the trust in the general, and so forth.
Humans.
Yeah.
You know, humans are like this, and I think, you know, America has been so successful over the years, has done some amazing things. You know, the great generations that have come before us, who have sacrificed for this country. Millions dying, hundreds of thousands dying in World War II, and so much sacrifice for this country, right? The thing that let them do that was the truth. It wasn't that people were telling them some stories. They were telling them, hey, we may lose this war.
Mm-hmm.
We need you to see the truth, you see? And I think that at times that we have not been truthful, using Vietnam as an example and other things like that, when we thought that we would tell people what they want to hear, erroneous, but yet we didn't do well.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's an amazing thing. How can it be that the secret of life is the truth? But it is. And the reason it's that way is that humans, our minds, need that. It is in our DNA. This is not something that somebody conjures up. And if you just basically go to the basics of what makes you and me humans, there are certain things that you can't change, Jay. No matter what you want to do, you can't do it because it's you and it's me. And if you face that, you'll be fine. If you spend your life trying to come up with reasons why it's not so, you totally miss the chance to live your life. And so many wasted lives are because of that.
It's interesting, the word trust and truth probably come from the same stem, I suppose. It's T-R-U and then S-T or G-H
Sure.
for one. One of the great songs by Metallica is Nothing Else Matters. And this was a song that the guy wrote for his girlfriend, and he wasn't intending on making it a commercial song. So it was made a commercial song. It is easily one of their best. And the great line from that one is, "Trust I seek, and I find in you." And another fictional example, in The Empire Strikes Back, Star Wars movie, Darth Vader has Luke in a corner, and he says, "Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father." Luke says, "He told me enough. He told me you killed him." He says, "No, I am your father." Luke says, "No, that's not true. That's impossible." Vader says, "Search your feelings. You know it to be true." Then Luke shouts, "No." Luke didn't doubt him for a second. The second that he said it, he knew it was true and he was just denying it. And the reason Vader could say it that way was because it was true, and that resonated with Luke. And then, of course, his mind had to rewrite his own story and deny it. But, yeah.
No, I agree. Yeah, it's an amazing thing. It's how you can boil everything down to some specific and very simple components. And, you know, as they say, simplicity is elegance.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the elegance of our lives. We complicate it.
Yeah.
Emotions and this
Well,
and
too much
that.
thinking, too. Too much thinking about I need X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
The Joneses have X, Y, Z, A, B, C, and D.
Yes.
When you may not need any of that.
I
Whatever
think-
it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting not to sort of stay on the Kennedy theme, but you know, in the last couple of weeks, I saw that there was a movie made about Chappaquiddick, about Edward Kennedy.
I'm a little bit familiar, but let me just reconvey what it's about. He was Ted Kennedy, the youngest brother, was driving in the 60s, late 69 or something, with his
69.
girlfriend, and then got into a car crash and she died. or
Yes,
something?
and actually, it wasn't even his girlfriend. See, this is interesting that you would think that, and that is, and I think it's going to make my point very well. So here is Ted Kennedy under lots of different pressures. His brother has been assassinated a year prior, and now he thinks that he's carrying the torch of the, and so forth, and he's maybe not ready, whatever. And he goes to and I haven't seen the movie, but I'm familiar with the story. Ted goes to a reunion of the people who worked on his brother's campaign. See the weight of this. So these are all people who volunteered and everything, and of course they're sad and all of these things. And it's in Chappaquiddick Island, and he drinks.
Which is where, somewhere in the Northeast? Or?
It's in Martha's Vineyard, in Massachusetts.
Okay.
And so, basically, he drinks a lot. Everybody is sad. I mean, this is the campaign.
And he must have been,
workers.
his 20s? He's older. 30s?
Yeah,
okay.
And he was a senator at the time. But, the thing is, it is a sad occasion. This is not like they're not having a party. It's the people getting it together, talking about how it would have been so great if Robert Kennedy wasn't assassinated. These are all campaign workers who worked on his campaign. So anyway, after a lot of this stuff, he's giving a ride to this woman, this young woman who used to work on the campaign of Robert Kennedy. She wasn't a girlfriend or anything. Without a doubt, there was some liaison there, and they went off the bridge. It's the rickety bridge, and it took him 9 hours to tell somebody that she was still in the car. And he said, God knows what happened, but he looked out for himself, and he did not face the truth. Now the point is not.
So she died, obviously.
She died.
Where she could have been saved.
She could have been saved.
That is horrible.
It is horrible.
Yeah, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
That is horrible.
She could have been saved. Maybe not by him, because I think any human would try a few times, but obviously the car is on its side, in the water, all of this. But had he faced the truth, just imagine what would have happened. The woman would have been saved, because they would have come and saved her, perhaps. Even if she wasn't saved, he would be in a different place. Then he tried to cover it up. Then he tried to do this, and he ruined his whole political career. Now, he tried later on with all kinds of different social agenda to remake his career, and I appreciate that he worked really hard for various things like health care, etc. But the truth, the bottom line of it is how not facing the truth, such a simple thing, can destroy so many things, just like the example of your Titanic captain, etc., etc. But you see, that is not unnatural. And this is the tough thing. After all the years of living in this world, I think one has to come to one conclusion. This is part of us.
Lying.
The capacity to lie. The capacity for self-preservation. The capacity to say all of these is just very much part of you. And what you have to do is you have to fight it and negate it and destroy it and look for the truth. That is the whole game. Just like the capacity to become obese is in every single one of us. But what do? You exercise, you watch your diet, you eat health, etc.
And you resist the urge to overeat.
Exactly.
Not resisting that one. Many times I've not resisted that when I'm feeling bad or whatever, and I do overeat sometimes. That's the thing. And then there comes a point at which you're doing more okay, and you want to eat more, and you just don't. Don't. And you feel bad, maybe for 5 seconds, maybe for 5 minutes, maybe for 5 hours. That's worth it though, because that those few moments of resistance end up leading to someone in a year or 5 years or 5 weeks being thin or being fat.
Yes, but the point, that's a very good point, but there is a piece of it I want to underline, and that's the fact that the wanting to eat just using that as an example, as one of these things that are inside us, is a natural thing. From an evolutionary standpoint, for you to survive in a world where there's nothing to eat, that urge is survival.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So, now, the problem is that we have changed our world. And something that was a protective thing for us.
Like how bears literally gorge in order to hibernate.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, or if you have like a pet, a dog, our dogs will eat all day. Anything until they vomit, they'll eat. That's in their DNA. That's in our DNA. But the thing that is important for us to understand is we have changed our world. We have made it so.
In parts, though.
There's plenty to eat.
Poor.
In
certain parts, though.
Yeah, in most places, and that's what I mean. There aren't many obese people in places where there's no food, right? So the point is,
I get what you're saying.
I'm saying that we have made it so food is plenty, and so the urge of eating needs to be controlled. If you don't control it, you're going to see the consequences.
40% of Americans over the age of 20 are obese.
And it's not their fault. It's just the fact that we don't think about the fact that this is just the same kind of thing as any other reflex of our body that has to be controlled by us, by thinking about it. If you don't think about it, you do it, and then negative consequences. And I don't mean to equate eating to lying and stuff, but the point is, if you go down the path of self-preservation, which is, again, a protective evolutionary mechanism for humans to survive, right? If you don't look out for you, somebody eats you in the jungle, right?
Right.
But we have changed that. We have brought this to a different level. And in that level, it requires to be benevolent requires us to fight those urges.
Right.
It requires us to be honest.
Yep.
And I think that is an active process.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just let it go.
Yeah.
And that's it. I think that is an important issue right there. So if every day you wake up and you say, actively, I am going to work to be a good person, even though it may not come naturally to me, right? So you're in the supermarket line and the guy ahead of you is taking too long in the self-checkout, and you're like, God, he's got 3 things to do. Why is it taking forever? And the natural urge is what?
Get annoyed or even say something to him.
Yeah. But if you just take a moment and you say, let me filter this through the right filters. You say, well, maybe this is his first time he's doing it. Maybe he can't see.
Or maybe there's something else going on that I have no idea about.
Yeah. Why don't I be a good guy? 5 minutes makes no difference. The world just changed.
That very mental process, though, when repeated over even a day, forget a day, over a year, over 10 years, that changes a lot.
Yes.
The one choice. And for me, everything is about direction. That's all that matters to me when it comes to fitness, especially if you're losing weight. The easiest thing to see. It's the easiest thing. There's 2 paths you can go on, and there's one that goes this way, one that goes this way. Go out a year, there's a gigantic difference. Absolutely. That came from one little split. And every path in between these 2 is actually a realistic path also. It really just depends on how much you do. And that's why I love this idea that the sky's the limit when it comes to anything with motivation and abilities. Let's say, for example, that you, like Kramer and Seinfeld, learned how not to sleep. Mm-hmm. You could do double the surgeries.
Sure.
Right? Mm-hmm. Or whatever other way in which you can, a realistic way that you could optimize your own self. You could double surgeries, or more time with your kids, or whatever it may be, or going golfing if that's whatever it may be. Same thing for me and anybody else. And that's why I talk about fitness so much. And for me, if my dad had more of an awareness and activity about this, he wouldn't be dead today. Mm-hmm. And I'd still have a father.
Well, I would say that you still do. He lives in you, and I'm not just saying it as a cliche. He is in every part of you, both from a biologic standpoint and otherwise, and that's the way to think about it too. But it's a funny thing. It's when I started my career, I put it was in the 1990s, and there was this movie called Schindler's List. Most people have seen that, and in that movie, there is one sentence from the Torah, and I'm not talking specific religions, just from being godly, and it says, "He who saves one life saves the world entire." Now, at that time, as a young surgeon, I put it on my wall, and it would be something I would look at, and it was an inspirational concept. But truly, what that means now, after all these years and so forth, what that means is he who saves that one person is this, not you. If I save me as a human, you save you, and all of us save ourselves by fighting these negative aspects of our being, which have been programmed into us by nature and biology.
And how other people around us behave.
Yes, that's what I mean. But see, if everyone does that, that's exactly how you save the world.
So I never interpreted it that way. I took it more face value. You save someone else and so forth. Yeah.
But this is, you can just see that actually is a beautiful thing. And I think that is my only sort of quibble, if you want to say it, in a very minor thing with our leaders of our country, is that they don't see the world like that. I think America is the greatest gift to humanity from a political standpoint, and the potential for America to change the world is just ceaseless. And it is within our capacity, and this is where I think we need to strive to be for all our leaders, whoever they are, is to do that, to inspire our people, because this is our history shows we have done this many times. We have done exactly what you and I are talking about in America, and we have reached great heights because of that. At the moment, we are not thinking like that a little bit, because we have sort of drawn lines and we have made it very simple, but it's not. I think if we all saw the good that's in us as not a natural thing, but an active process that has to be brought out through the bad, and that's really what it is. You have to reach in your heart, go past the bad, which is in all of us, and get the good out of there. And if you did that on an individual basis, on a national basis, on a world basis,
or a universe basis, who knows who else is out there?
Well, we would go up there if we did that, and that's an amazing thing. The thing that amazes me is, even though we're so flawed as humans,
that we're so good as well.
That we're so good.
Yeah, so I want to give context to that Schindler's List scene to whoever hasn't seen that. So this is at the end of the film, and Oskar Schindler has been buying Jewish Holocaust camp members from this Nazi guard who is both a Nazi and financially corrupt. And he buys so many of these people. And then they're free. They can go live. And this one of Schindler's sort of friends gives this ring to him and gives that line, "He who saves the world entire." And it hits Schindler at a very deep level, and he notices that he has a nice car, he has a nice jacket, he has a ring, he has all this stuff, and he starts saying, this car, he would have bought this car, that would be 10 people. This ring, this would be 2 people. One person, and that person is dead. And he says, I could have got one more person. And at the same time, this guy's telling him, you know, listen, you did so much, 1,100 people are alive because of what you did. And that's all true.
Yeah.
But there's always more, always more. He says, I could have got one more person, and I didn't. And he collapses on the floor crying. And all these people around him start coming, they start hugging him and whatever. And that is a truly beautiful, I've seen the movie once. I've seen that scene 20 or 50 times. It is a beautiful, beautiful scene.
But you know that the neat thing about it is that he was just a businessman. To him, in the beginning of his experience, these people were just commodities. They were simply a means of making pots, if you recall.
So no, so he bought them so he could work. They can work in his factory.
Absolutely.
So that changes it a little bit.
He was, but that's that makes it even more powerful, because he was going towards the norm of what people do. There's a war.
Oh.
He's a business guy. He is actually he's shrewd, so he can play the game. Get a factory going. Here it is. It's a factory that's empty. It's owned by a Jewish owner, and the Nazis take it over. So he's using these people to make money.
And it's possible that if he weren't making money off it, he couldn't have saved as many as well. Very interesting.
But he reached, at some point, his humanity came out.
Because he saw what he was really doing. He thought he was making money, but there's something deeper in him that made him even deal with this Nazi guy and do all that. Yeah.
You know, that is, actually, to be totally honest with you, he thought that he was saving those, I don't know, 1,100 Jewish people or whatever, and most people on the surface look at that and say that's what he did. Oskar Schindler saved 1,200 Jewish people. No, the 1,200 Jewish people saved Oskar Schindler. They gave him a soul. They let him reach through the pain and all of the negative things in his heart, which were to make money off of concentration camp prisoners, and find the good in his heart. And that is an active struggle. And I'm not trying to act like, we're better people than the usual or anything. This is not coming out of arrogance or any of this better than thou thing. This is a life lesson. And my regret about any of these things is we don't spend time teaching these life lessons to our youth. We don't help our youth that they have the potential to be bad. In fact, it's a lot easier to be bad. And what you have to do is actively fight that to be good. They don't like it, and you need to be that way.
And you undergo pain in the process. And number one evolutionary thing is to avoid pain.
Yes. We spoke about my father and everything, and of course everybody thinks their father is the greatest and all of this, and that's good. But the one thing that my father always gave his children, and some took it more than others, so you see that the audience is just as important as the person giving it. It was this, that don't think it's going to come naturally. That natural thing is never going to work, and it's always going to be bad. And I think that you have to actively work at it, no matter what it is you do. No matter what it is you do.
And I'll just repeat, I just said it, just to make emphasis. You work at it and go through pain in the process. Necessary.
Yes. Just like a good athlete. You're not going to get in shape unless you work at it. Again, that's so simple. Everyone
and go through pain.
Yeah. Everyone understands that, right? I mean, if you're going to be an Olympic level whatever, you really have to work 5-10 years of your life, and every day at 6 in the morning, whatever. It is totally natural for us to accept that to be a world-class athlete, you really have to work at it.
You can see it with your eyes. You can see the result. And you get in awe at what they can do as well.
And no one disagrees with that. I mean, I don't think anyone would say, no, you don't have to work at it. You can just, no. There's no one who's a natural world-class athlete. You work at it. You may have some talent, but you work at it. The thing that people miss is it's the same process with your mind, with your being, with who you are, with your humanity. You got to work at it. If you don't work at it, you go right back to all of the wrong things.
I've been asked to talk to a class of third graders about bullying. This is happening next week. And I'm speaking with you right now at a sort of higher level. To talk to kids is going to be a different thing because they understand things at a different level.
Sure.
And I can do that. I can be like a kid and so forth. But I'm really thinking about how to bring that out. I've been watching videos about bullying and what kids need to know and so forth. But I'm excited about I'm actually excited, really honestly, to spend time with the kids. That's what I'm excited about. Yeah. And I'm excited too that if I can make an impact and so forth. But I guess it starts. It's.
But bullying, for example, something. I'm not an expert or anything like that about bullying. We've all kind of seen it in our own personal lives and so forth. But the one of the most important issues whenever there's that type of conflict, whatever that is it's a two-way street. I find that we don't talk about it like that. It's always the bullier that's at fault. And I'm not talking about fault and so forth, but it's important to take responsibility for the situation. Understanding that it's two pieces to this puzzle, not just one. Now, one is a bad person who's doing bad things, but then there's another recipient. And what can that recipient do? And I think that that's true about any conflict, right? In our lives, in our work area, whatever it is, here I am, I'm working and I talk to, there are many times I may disagree with someone about something, right? That's the same situation. How you deal with that? Do you walk away? Do you escalate it? Do you
stand your ground?
Stand your ground.
Yeah.
Different things like that. And I think that, obviously not to make it too simple, but the key is the person across from you, whatever that situation is, if to see the truth in your eyes, you're good. And it's amazing how everything solves itself when you don't pay attention to that. So if you and I are arguing about whatever, and I'm trying to hold my let's say you're a Republican, I'm a Democrat, and we're discussing politics. We are basically two parallel lines. We're never going to come together, right?
And also the ideological premises from which we approach each specific situation is opposite.
Yes. However, the fact that we're talking about it means that we're talking about those ideologic premises for something. What is that something? It's our country. It's our society. It's our people. So if you say, wait a minute, you and I both mean well. We're not talking like this because we want to hurt our country. We care about our country. But we think that my idea is going to help it more than that other idea. That's really what it is. But if we stop that, because that is the reflex again, and you say, okay, let us say what is good for this country. I respect what you have to say. You respect what I have to say. Let's talk about this country. We will not fight. We will work together. And that's what they call crossing the aisle. That's what they call being bipartisan. There's a lot of talk like that. But the bottom line of it is, if you put your self-interest aside and talk about the interest of the greater good, whatever that is, not only will you get more benefit from that, but you also will accomplish this.
Yeah.
That's it.
My way of handling that, I like everything you're saying. You talk about the common good. My way of handling it is I look at the person as a person, and that's it. And I've had heated conversations with a couple of people, and I'm very proud, actually, of the fact that I have very close friends of all sorts. When it comes to religion, when it comes to politics, when it comes to, and I'm not talking about acquaintances, I'm talking about friends, I'm talking about close friends. And whenever these things come up, I talk with them about it. And again, I've actually gotten better at and not letting that reflex get in the way, that anger and so forth. I don't look at the person for their ideas or so forth, I look at them for being my friend.
Sure, sure, because you're looking at the good of, again, the good of humanity, or choosing to look at those. But as in a general rule, honestly, I mean, it's interesting because, again, none of us can go through a day without such things happening in different shapes and forms. But the key thing is, and again, I'm not a priest, I'm not some guy who's trying to be a goody-goody kind of guy. Actually, I'm the opposite. I'm saying, what is the best thing that's going to make me feel good and put my head on that pillow and sleep soundly, is to understand that as a being, as a flawed being, and again, I don't mean that I'm a sinner or any of these religious kinds of things. I'm just saying, you know, the way these genes are working and how I was put together by nature, I have flaws. One of the flaws, again, because of our evolutionary background, is pride. I don't want to be the first guy to step back. You don't want to be the first guy to step back. That is natural, you know? It's important to talk about that, to say this is one of your sins, pride. So, to understand how you deal with that sin is to face that very sin.
And that's different than pride, like say pride in your work, pride in your own self or who you are and whatever.
Yes, they're similar because that pride in your work makes you do positive things, because that's all being self-interested and self-centered and all of that, right? I mean, you want to be happy with what you did. So that pride is good. That pride then translates into a discussion two people are having or whatever it is, and that pride turns into I'm right and you're wrong pride. And I am not going to be the first one to blink pride. But you see, the thing that people don't understand, this is not a battlefield. This is not. If you're going to be in a battlefield, the rules are different. This is social behavior within society, within whatever it is that we do, right? We're not getting up every day and strapping on an M16 going to work, right? So, but to turn it into this all or none phenomenon is wrong. And I honestly think it takes a lot of maturity, and it's not easy. You know, you almost have to like force yourself to say, put aside the pride. You and I are arguing about something. I'm like really mad at you. You did this and that, and you're mad at me because I did this and that.
I'll in my mind, I'll start thinking as well. And the longer our history is, the more I have to pull from what you did, years ago, and how it made me feel. It renews itself. It feels bad again at this moment, and so on.
Yeah, it's like
then of course it's not really about the specific thing we're talking about. That's just a vehicle, so to say, for me to.
It's a vehicle for you to make sense out of your anger. So I mean, it's really, you're just you're recruiting concepts from your past as like an army that you're trying to get more troops on your side to make it more powerful, which is stupid, frankly. If you really think about it, it's like, boy, this is really crazy. And so and then the concept that the purpose of life, of humans who are higher level thinkers, and the higher you go, the more you should apply these rules, is to see the world as gray. See the world as not so clear cut. See the world as a world where we all are capable of doing bad things, no matter what's going on. And see the world as the guy who can help this world is the one who says, or the woman, whatever, the person, who can say, I recognize that we can make mistakes. So, we're family members.
There's an athlete in the obese person. And for me, I don't know what this classifies as, but I used to weigh 182 pounds less than 4 years ago. And then somehow I just kind of shed all that. I changed my diet and exercise, whatever. And I'm a tennis player now, so.
Mind over matter. Because you recognize the truth, you see? And I think that again, we don't want to talk about obese or whatever, but in general, in life, you go down a certain road, and if you don't face the truths of that road, you just keep going further and further into that rabbit hole to the point where you're out of control. So many wars are like that. I mean, it's an amazing thing. If you McMaster, who was President Trump's previous national security advisor, General McMaster, wrote a very nice book. I don't know how many people have read it. It was his PhD thesis, so it's a very intellectual exercise talking about Vietnam, and the interaction of the politicians and the military and the various things that led us down that horrible path, right? And it is very clear. Now, people, if you talk about something like that, the natural thing is what? Pointing fingers. It was you. The beauty of America, and I think the theme is emerging that I'm so proud of this country, is that in America we can step back and evaluate even our most horrible mistakes. I don't know of any other culture where they can do that so readily. And I hope we do it even more. But you know, it's an amazing thing that we can sit back and say, wow, we lost this war like no other. This was a horrendous thing. 55,000 American soldiers died. Thousands and thousands of millions of Vietnamese died. We just set fire to the world. But at the end, we can sit and say, how do we see how we don't do this again?
Well, it's interesting. You talk about how we have this sort of self-reflectiveness and all that. Being an American born, I'm aware of like we have food that other countries don't have and opportunities and so forth. And I'm not haughty about it. I'm appreciative and all that. But I do everything I can, but I cannot know how much I have here. So I guess I take it for granted, but it's not on purpose. I just don't know. It's just normal to me. This is life, man.
Well, one of the things, again, America is not all perfect, obviously, but you know, as a culture, one of our flaws is we are America-centric. So it would actually be a great thing for us as a culture, for our politicians, et cetera, whoever is going to run for office, to actually take a course in world history so we don't keep repeating these mistakes. But we don't look at that. But if we looked at the world, we would actually appreciate ourselves more and be more motivated to be better. But the reason I brought up McMaster's book is in that book, it is very clear that the sin of that whole experience was the inability for everyone to face the truth. Facing the truth. You know, again, people would say, gee, President Johnson didn't face the truth, and that's why he escalated the war. I would say that is only part of the story. Those people who were in the streets talking about being against the war and being baby killers and all of these, they also were not facing the truth. You see, as a culture, as a country, we were flawed at that point. And I think that for whatever reason, we were unable to pull ourselves out of it. And I hope those are the kinds of lessons, you know, that is, again, we all are capable of falling into those problems.
How do you think Kennedy would have handled that? Had he stayed till 1969?
Well, we're now, this is all basically speculation, obviously, but believe it or not, I have studied President Kennedy a lot, or as much as is available. President Kennedy was this good-looking, intelligent, playboy, rich Northeasterner who got elected on the power of his daddy's money and all of his connections. Seriously. Did he deserve to become president? Probably, and I'm just building up to this. I don't mean to be disrespectful to his memory or anything, but really, he looked better. He didn't have too much going on in terms of world experience or anything. On the other hand, Richard Nixon was very experienced and so forth, except he had lots of personal issues and demons, and he just couldn't get it together, you know?
Well, the way he spoke also was so, it's a little bit boring to listen to. It's too meticulous, too thoughtful.
Yeah, but that is seen as being shifty by people. Whereas, and so you see, but those are not real. Those are just the actors on a stage. So President Kennedy, when he did become president, was probably not the strongest candidate for leading America. During his time, he grew, and in a very short time, he became a different man. And that's the amazing thing about him. And that's what I love about this man, that if you study his years in office, you see that every conflict, you know, he had never thought about some of these things that occurred. And yet he threw himself into them, put aside so many of his own demons and inadequacies and insecurities or whatever it is, and paid attention to the truth. And as a result, not only did he learn, but he did some great things for this country. And then at the end, it is interesting that at the end, you know, the day that he got assassinated, he had an emissary, a Frenchman, who was the emissary of the President of the United States, visiting with Castro to basically bring peace. And that emissary at the time, and when the news of his assassination came, the two of them were sitting talking about this. And the Castro turned to the emissary, who's written about this, saying, "There's the end of peace." You see? And he was also going to get out of Vietnam. Mm-hmm. Now, he learned the hard way. I mean, if you study the history of Vietnam, you'll see that he and Bobby did some bad things in the first couple of years they were there. They were responsible for the escalation of the war. They were responsible for the assassination of the president of Vietnam because they needed to get rid of him. So they fell into all of these terrible things. But what they did is they learned and they just pulled themselves out of it, to the extent that in the timeline of September, October of 1963, just a month before his assassination, he was talking about getting out of Vietnam. And he would have. He would, and because, again, not because of who he was, but because just history seems to point to the fact that he kept learning and he kept understanding and he kept saying, nothing is written. I'm not going to keep doing the stuff that we've done. You know, it's an interesting thing. The CIA, and this is, again, we're all proud Americans, but the beauty of America is the greatest sign of your commitment to this country and the greatest sign of patriotism in America is the truth. Because that's what defines you as an American. Truth to America, right? And so all of these are not criticisms of our country. These are expressions of love for this country. But you know, we had learned over the period of the Cold War in the 50s and so forth, that we could just, if we didn't like some third world country that we thought was some banana republic, quote unquote, we could get rid of the leader, pay a little money, make a coup d'etat, and it'll all be fine, right? We did it in Guatemala, we did it in so many countries. And I mean, people would, I'm sure people, a lot don't know, but you know, I mean, we changed the government of Guatemala over bananas. We did. Because our dole wanted to have cheap bananas. And so we can't have this guy in power. So you see, so there's a lot of that. So we are not, again, we are capable of doing bad things, but we are also capable, the beauty of America is we can understand it and then pull good out of the bad. So that's what President Kennedy was doing. You know, when he first came into office, they said, hey, we're going to Bay of Pigs. He's like, He's like a deer in headlights. He has no idea what's going on. He doesn't even know where Cuba is almost, you know? And he's fine, let's do it. And then, but when he sees, he's like, I'm not doing this again. And as a result of that, the world didn't go into an atomic war because of that. You see? That is an amazing man.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So I think that if we, I do believe the world would have been a different world. I really do.
Better.
Much better.
Yeah.
Much better. Because I think that they were in the process of learning. He was learning. I think
something that his successors didn't do in that way, like Johnson or...
No, I think President Johnson, who again did everything from the heart, I don't believe anybody does any of these things out of malevolence. He was as much a patriot as anybody could be, no question about it. He just didn't have the experience, and unfortunately, a leader is just as good as his knowledge or whatever it is that the people around him tell him, and so forth. And the thing that is the most important, and you see this in every situation, whether it's in a company, whether it's in surgery, whether it's in your life, so it expands, extends across the world, is you have to surround yourself with people who will make you see the truth even though when you don't want to see it.
What leadership lessons does any organization or person have to learn from Kennedy? What you talk about, he learned from his mistakes, he grew in the position, so forth, which would have led to different choices. How would an organization utilize that sort of thinking?
Great question, actually. When it comes to looking how you should lead an organization or how you develop an organization, there's been a lot of work done. I mean, you can just go through like an airport and see all these business books about how to do this and that and everything else. There are two books that I have seen and over the past number of years that are really, I think they both are exceptional in their own way. One's a book called Good to Great. Many people have read this. This is by an author by the name of Collins. He's a Stanford economics professor and really tries to bring a scientific approach to understanding how an organization or how a company can become great. That we can talk about that. And I have found that to be the Bible of everything I have done with my organizations and so forth. And then there's a more recent book by one of the founders of PayPal. It's actually a very small book. It's blue in cover by Peter Thiel.
0 to 1.
0 to 1.
Yeah,
You've read that.
I have read it.
Excellent. And I think that's it's a book that takes a little bit of digesting because it seems like a very sort of ruthless approach to how you do business in this world. But I think that if you really sit and take it for what it was meant to be, it is very, very helpful for everybody. And you can take these lessons, I think, for personal life. You can take it to family life. You can take to your business with your building a business or an organization, or even to a country. So, and I think if JFK, for example, and obviously we both respect him and his legacy, but if JFK were alive, he would have done many of these things without even having to read this book. You know.
Why would he have done it? Just based on his education, based on his propensity to change who he was? What's special about him?
Yeah, I think there are a number of things. Now you can kind of read into someone's life and understand them a little bit better. But I think that he came from a difficult situation in terms of his family. He was the second choice, who had to become the first choice, in a family that was very patriarchal, and actually most people pay a lot of attention to his father, but his mother was also a major driver of excellence in that family. Mm-hmm. So it really wasn't patriarchal, and as you dig deeper, but he had a sort of the weight of the world on his shoulders, not in terms of just this country and not what he wanted to do. I think he started out with these pressures from the family to be to be something that was supposed to be so different and so excellent. And but then as he grew into his presidency, and as you read his papers, you should really go and see the JFK Library outside Boston. You can see that he had the ability to have an open mind and to grow. So that's really, some of us have to read books and understand from other people's experiences. And obviously, his life experience as the President of the United States in a time when there was a lot of conflict. And you know, it's a fascinating thing. It's like, and same thing with his brother, which really came from him, because the two of them, you know, imagine these WASPs from the Northeast who were used to having African Americans really as servants and sort of in a different capacity, who never even thought about civil rights, because not because they were bad people, just because they never were made to see it for what it was, had the capacity at a time where this was totally foreign to them to start talking about it and seeing it for what it was, and all of the discrimination in this country. So that takes a lot of courage. That really takes a lot of courage, because certainly it was not politically expedient. It certainly was totally foreign to them, and so forth, and then on and on and on. So, and then to the point where his brother, when a few years later, when he was running for president, again, I don't want this to be a history discussion, but really, he changed. And this is a sign of a good man, where he says, you know, I didn't even know this stuff existed, and now he became the voice of the African American people of as much as he could in the 60s, you know? And that's impressive. That's because there were so many other things at the time that would have been considered to be politically a better way to go. And we were talking earlier about trust. Trust is huge in whether you're a leader of an organization or a country or people and so forth. I mean, it's amazing to me that the only city in America, a large city in America in 1967 or 8, when Martin Luther King was assassinated, the only large city that didn't have riots was Indianapolis. And the reason they didn't have riots was that very day, Robert Kennedy was on the campaign trail in Indianapolis. And he spoke the truth to this audience of African American people who were ready to burn the place down. Right?
I didn't know that.
He spoke the truth. And most people told him, the mayor, everybody else said, don't go there. Don't hold this rally. Don't do this stuff, because we're going to have major problems because some horrendous thing has happened, right? And I think the people were very frustrated, and everything was incendiary. He talked to them. He stood on a truck bed, spoke to the crowds, and he spoke from the heart. And he said to them that I too had my brother assassinated. But my brother was assassinated by a person who was a white man. So color is not the significant thing here. You see? So sure, Martin Luther King was assassinated by a white man. But it should not be about color. It should be about humanity. And on and on. I don't want to paraphrase him, but the point is, that is a huge thing for a guy who a few years earlier had no idea what being black meant in America. Mm-hmm. You see, so I think, and the reason these things are important, again, it all goes back to what we were talking about, facing the truth head on, and I think that if you're going to run an organization, and we can talk about that, but go ahead.
So, in terms of the Robert Kennedy quelling the frustration when every other city went out in riots, you spoke about how trust is important with that. in a lot of organizations, obviously there's a lot of mistrust of, I mean, clearly of other people, other businesses and so forth, and that's fine, it's competition. But internally, people are very concerned with their own selves, their own position. Things have become very political from the standpoint of you tell one person one thing, you tell one person another thing. If you watch House of Cards, that is the epitome of that.
Sure.
And I think that when people learn how to trust each other more, you have more cohesion and so forth. And it's not necessarily normal to do in the same way RFK's advisors told him not to do such, because it's not safe as such. It's not normal.
Yes.
And I think that actually that's not a good thing, that it's not normal to operate with truth and trust.
No, again, it goes back to everything we were talking about. It's a reflex not to operate, and you got to fight that every day. Now, again, I suggest very strongly to whoever's listening to us or watching us talk about this, they should pick up the book, Good to Great. This is the first time that I have seen all these ideas that we are talking about put in a very scientific, organized approach to the problem, which is important because you can talk about these things, and if you know the answers, it's clear. If you don't know the answers, it's chaotic.
Well, you struggle and you wonder, you throw your hands in the air wondering why things aren't working, and people can go their whole life like that.
Yes. So if you pick up that book and if you read that book, you'll see, and everyone else, that what these guys did is they asked a very simple question. And the question was, what makes a company great? So take the company, change the word to what makes your life great, what makes your organization great, what makes a country great. So whatever you want, just plug it in. What's greatness? And how do you get to the greatness? And because they were economics people, they looked at companies. And it's interesting that, again, I don't mean to go over the whole book, but if I recall, they looked at 2,500 companies, which were always in the Fortune list of being great companies in America and so forth, or successful companies. And then they said, we're going to put some standards for greatness that are going to be so outside the reach of most people. Mm-hmm. These are going to be so high. It's sort of like, you and I want to go to the Olympics or something, So if to run the mile, you got to run it below 4 minutes, or you're not even going to be there. You see, that kind of thing. So and I don't remember all the details, but they were very, very rigorous rules for what would define greatness in terms of the accomplishments of the company from a financial standpoint.
Well, I will say also the only thing that people are interested in watching or learning from are the great ones. For example, pro tennis. I'm sure there are thousands of pro tennis players out there. The top 4 or 5 get all of the financial spoils, most of them. And then the top 20, top 50, top 100, they do well enough. After that, it's nothing.
Right.
And that because those top people are the people that people come to watch. With the Olympics too, we see these few people. How many millions train with the dream of being an Olympic athlete and don't make it?
Absolutely. And again, how many companies start every year and don't make it? That kind of thing. But the point is that the things that came out with, so out of the 25 some hundred companies, they picked 11. Pretty rigorous. And these 11 companies they then said, okay, so if they're going to perform in this very exceptional way based on stock market numbers, et cetera, what made them? What's the common theme that goes across these 11 companies? And they boiled it down to certain things. And frankly, my team, my organization, my personal life has been running on those parameters since 1999. And every time I deal with issues, I look at it through the lens, and we call it the Bible, which is really this book. And you can read it like on a plane and put it aside as an interesting read, but you can also delve into it just like you would delve into a Bible, where you can read every verse and understand what it's meant to be and so forth. What they did is the first thing that they decided was important for these companies to reach greatness was leadership. Now, we talk about leadership all the time, right? Leader this, everybody's a leader these days. Their courses, et cetera, et cetera. But they defined 5 levels of leadership. And these 11 all had level 5 leadership. So level 5 leadership is not easy to attain. And they defined each level a certain way. But the level 5 leader was not a leader who was trying to make the company great. He was not trying to look for, stock market performance, et cetera, et cetera. He was the guy or the woman who felt that his success came from the success of the people in the company. Not the success of the company, the people in the company. Very unusual. You see? For example, read, and I'm not trying to pick on one person or another, but these days you read about all these horrendous things with airlines. The dog dies and person is not put on the plane and all this other stuff, right? And I'm sure they're very good at flying the planes. It's not because, it's relatively safe and everything. But you can just see that the leader of these companies is not taking care of his people or her people.
Is it possible that they are and that certain things slip through the cracks?
No, it can't be that prevalent. Because if they were, the example we spoke about a few minutes or hours ago, whatever it was, about the woman trying to get on the plane, if the CEO of that airline cared for his or her worker, that worker would have ownership. That worker wouldn't be just a worker.
Passing the buck.
Passing the buck.
Yeah.
This is my airline. How can I let one of my customers feel so bad? It's unbelievable, right? Because the person leading the company doesn't see his success in the success of his people,
right?
They're expendable.
Well, someone told me once also, if you want to know how good a company is, look no further than the leader. And I said to the rank and file worker, the leader is so many steps away. It's almost like it doesn't matter. And what this guy said is, well, the rank and file worker's boss was hired by someone, who's hired by someone, who's hired by someone, who's hired by someone, who's hired by the leader.
Absolutely.
And that sort of culture permeates.
Yes. And if you want to look at a broken organization, a broken family, a broken anything, you find that people don't take responsibility. So if the lowest
like a broken
person,
warehouse.
Like a broken warehouse. So the key is there is no low or high. People are doing different jobs. So this is not the army. But if it was an army, having been there, I can tell you that an army, the success of the army is what? That the soldier takes responsibility for the defense of his country. He's not fighting for the general. He's fighting for his country. You see? So that person at the gate is not a good soldier. And they're not a good soldier, not because they're a bad person, but because their generals failed them. You see? And nobody fights for the generals. They fight for their country. So the issue is that the leadership is significant. And the leadership needs to be, again, an active process. It can't be that, I happen to have seniority, experience, or whatever. I'm the smartest guy in the company, so I become the leader. We see this a lot actually in medicine. It's fascinating. And I've learned this over the years. It's an interesting thing. So over the years, as you go through, you have aspirations. You want to be the chief of this, the head of this, the chairman of this, all of these things. And we don't do well with that. And the reason we don't do well with that is the person who is selected to head that department or part of the organization is the most senior, maybe even the most skilled, but not the best leader. And he is so involved in his own career moves, so involved in all of the things that he's doing, or his vision for the department and all of these, that he forgets that his success depends on the success of the most junior person under his guidance. So this is an interesting thing. So you see department chairs like 2 years in the job and they're gone, et cetera, because of the fact that at the end of the day, they're living in mediocrity. So it's easy. So like one thing I say is, it's good doesn't exist. Good means mediocre. There's greatness, there's mediocrity, there's bad. There's no such thing as good. Because frankly, people don't want good in an organization. It doesn't work that way. They better call it for what it is. So that airline...
And calling it good is also, in a way, kind of separating it from the truth, which is that it's mediocre. And it makes you not realize that there are things that need to be improved upon. It's an illusion, that idea.
It's a lie, absolutely. Euphemism, whitewash, whatever you want to call it. No, but that's really what it is. And that's a wake-up call right there, you see? And I think that, unfortunately, many organizations that don't have that kind of leadership spend so much of their energy on the whitewash, on controlling the political fallout, on and on and on.
Which you won't have to if you did it right to begin with.
Which you would.
Pretty simple.
Pretty simple.
Yeah.
But takes a lot of work, right?
Yeah, a lot. It's kind of like the person. Let's say there's two people, and let's say there's two Farids in medical school. One works really hard and does the hard work and so forth, and the other one just is lazy for whatever reason, then falls into maybe taking drugs in order to help himself, whatever it may be, right? For whatever reason, doesn't develop what he's supposed to be. You look a couple years out, these two Farids are going to be at very different spots.
Absolutely.
And then this one needs to maybe ask people for money or whatever, right? Whereas this Farid has the fellowship.
Yeah,
you know?
The simpler things look simple because they're elegant, and there was a lot of work that went into making it look simple. You know, I mean, you watch like a Usain Bolt shoot across in a few seconds.
Yeah.
You're like, boy, he's got good genes. No,
Right.
he doesn't have good genes. That's only part of the game. He's worked really hard to become like that, and it looks so beautiful.
Right.
So many things like that.
Well, the Spartans also, who were considered to be the sort of quintessential warriors, that one of their sort of principles was simplicity. They had a hard and simple life.
Yes.
You work hard. That's it.
And
I mean, that's not the end all of life, but in terms of performance and from a
well, it
certain
can
way.
be life, because if you're happy doing it, it's fine. Who said? I mean, there are people who do whatever they do and they're happy with it. Why should I tell them that
Good
they
point.
should do
Yeah.
something else?
Right.
But so I think, you know, this, if you, again, you kind of, these are the pillars, and you can always, whenever you're dealing with an issue in life, and this is really the purpose of this discussion, just like when I'm dealing with an issue, I go right back to these pillars. So if there's a problem of customer service in my organization, I have to go and ask, am I being a level 5 leader or not? You see what I mean? Those are the kinds of things. Am I doing it the right way? Instead of coming up with all kinds of reasons. And when I take charge and I show that I care about that person, and it's not like, you know, you're blaming them or anything. So for what happens? That gate agent is going to be fired or something for doing something. That's how they deal with problems, right? No. The CEO, imagine if the CEO came down and said, this is my problem. I didn't show you the love of this company. I didn't let you be the owner of this company. I kept it to myself, and that's why you're acting like you don't own the company. So once you are past the leadership and understanding that whenever you're going somewhere, this is not going to be a straight line, and which is the discussion we've had, then the next thing, now you've set up this organization or your home or something. The next thing is very important, and we've been talking about this all morning, facing the difficult facts. And that is a huge issue for an organization. So you want to know the truth, the truth, the truth. So greatness in an organization comes from knowing the truth. And that's the only thing that matters. So if you are...
There are problems with that, though, because who reports the truth? And then what spin do they put on it? What fact do they selectively perceive and selectively distribute? And then how does the leader himself or herself actually then interpret it? It starts to become extremely complicated.
Very true. But in these organizations, and in most successful organizations, it's a round table. And everyone is at the table. So you'll see people try to do this, it's like any employee who has any question or thoughts or anything, no matter how separated they are from the administration, they should have the ability to voice it, to talk about it, and so forth. Do you really think that if a gate agent who had this issue wrote what they should do and they said, I don't have the ability to be an owner, because if I was an owner, I would say, here's a hotel room, here's a meal ticket, here's everything, we're going to take care of you. But they don't have the ability. So, but if they could, you see, and get it to the deciding body, which is a round table of leaders, then it would happen.
It sounds like empathy is the thing that's needed, and the thing is, empathy doesn't lead to less, it leads to more. It leads to more money.
Yes.
It leads to fewer upset customers, fewer bad news stories, and more people looking and marveling at these companies that are operating really well. And I wouldn't be surprised if those companies ended up taking disproportionate market share from others based on how good people feel by engaging with them. And then services and products, as we sit today in 2018, I think are extremely good. We've got great healthcare, we've got great cameras, great everything.
Sure.
But what people are lacking is a certain sense of trust, like we said. As I brought up the Metallica line, trust I seek and I find in you. When you can offer that to somebody in any regard, whether you're a kid and another kid, or whether you're a doctor and a patient, whatever it is, that's what they want, that's what they come for, and that's all they really care about. And I think any company that embraces that and puts that into the fiber of their being does a deep service to the person. Forget the thing that they actually do on the surface.
Exactly, because it's just a thing. It's just a thing. I mean, you're buying an experience. You're buying it rather than a thing, and that company needs to understand that. So you really need a council in a company. We have that in my organization. It's a council that is, again, a round table of people who are stakeholders, and they speak the truth. So if you're the president, you don't want to surround yourself with yes men. Or yes women. You want people who will give you their best advice. And then we talked about Kennedy. Kennedy got all kinds of advice.
Well, he also blamed his Bay of Pigs mistake on bad advice.
Absolutely. Yeah, because
he said just because these people are da-da-da-da-da doesn't mean they know anything about what they're talking about.
Exactly. Or they're looking through these blinders.
Or they have an agenda.
Yes. And the people of the country, the thing is, the realization of a good president is that the people of the country elected him to be the president. Him. Not general this, not this guy, not that guy, him. He is responsible to those people, and his number one responsibility is good judgment. That's why they voted for him. They voted for him because they think that he's got their interests at heart.
One of the great photos of Kennedy, it's either a photo or a painting, is one where he's... You've seen this one?
Yes.
That one says a lot. It's an unusual photo, right? Because if you look at photos of George Washington, he looks glorious, and a lot of Kennedy photos, he looks glorious, and so on. But that one right there, that when I was even young, there was a photo of that in my middle school, and it spoke to me.
Very nice.
There's a burden. There's a burden of being someone who has all these things to be responsible for. And in a lot of ways, it's not an enviable spot at all. In a lot of ways it is. You know, you're the boss and so forth.
You choose it. It's humility. It's that's actually is his portrait in the White House. That's his presidential portrait, which says a lot about his whole thing.
You hardly see his face. You don't see his eyes.
Mm-hmm. That's him. That's the man. And again, this is not about him specifically, but we obviously respect that. In fact, it's very interesting. There is a painting we have in my office and in my operating room of a surgeon, very much in a similar pose, where he is actually, his head is down, he's bowing, and his fingers are crossed like this, which really reflects, in my eyes at least, I don't know whoever painted it what they had in mind, but it reflects the humility of the surgeon in taking on a major task, and his belief that there is a higher power that's going to guide him. And that's important. And I think that is the kind of thing that if you're in a position of leadership of any kind, where human lives are involved, and it's most of the time, if not all the time, you need to take those two very seriously.
Well, going into fiction for a second, because I believe in art, in The Lion King. Have you seen The Lion King?
Yes, yes.
So what happens is Simba's father dies. He's the great king, Mufasa. Simba spends a long time trying to find himself, and then the monkey brings him into the well to see his father. He sees his own reflection, and then that image transforms into Mufasa. Then Mufasa comes from the clouds, as in the form of cloud, and starts talking to him and tells him who he needs to be, what he needs to do, and that he must go back and go save his people, or lion people. And that was the turning point for him. Now, whether in real life the sort of thing, if it even happens internally, whatever it may be, you talked about guiding light in our previous interview, and you talked about your father as well. When people take and remember very deep lessons that they got from somebody, especially someone they respected a lot, that can often help them when their head is hanging and they don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. Because in a leadership position, you talked about how the world is gray. You don't know which way to go. And the leader is he is the discerner. Mm-hmm. He's the one that needs to figure out what to do. What voices he then listens to is the real question. And I think when people source the inspiration from within, if their parents taught them good lessons like Simba or whatever it may be, that's where you have the magic.
I agree. No, well said. Absolutely. Yes, I agree. And I think that those are important things. Again, to sort of, if you don't make this into like a blueprint, you don't pay attention to it on a daily basis. But if you make it into a blueprint of the things we have discussed, of how a leader should be, and then so forth and so on, and then you go to it whenever there's an issue or a question or a conflict, then it clarifies it. So having the right counsel is very important.
Let's very quickly recap the parts of that blueprint. So for the level 5 leader, caring about your people, knowing who to put where, mm-hmm. right? Having the right counsel. What else?
Taking the responsibility and not the credit.
Okay.
Very important for that leader. And really considering...
And is that, so I just want to make the list, so yeah. Let's finish the list.
Sure.
So is that the last thing? Or?
No, there's more, I think. That's one. Then after that, having the leader be the leader. Now, what does that mean? What that means is, in many organizations, you see this all the time. Someone, let's say like you, entrepreneurial spirit, starts a company, and you have a vision. And what happens is the company starts getting bigger. And then the businessmen come in, and they're trying to organize it. They mean well, but the company loses its soul.
Right.
So that's a big deal. That's what happened to Apple in the 1980s, and they saw the error of their ways, and there's the result. It's happened many times. So the visionary leader, in fact, it's interesting that I think Zuckerberg and Facebook, they learned from the Apple experience, and even though he's a young man, the vision sustains them. So it's important to see that in real life these things are important. So, for example, in my world, if I were to take a back seat to a business person because the organization is too large, the business person is not going to care about the same things as I do. So aside from the fact that as a leader I engender trust, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and I would lose all that if I have that kind of levels, which is what happens to most companies that go down the mediocrity road. At the end, the company will fail. And so that's an important issue, that the leader, the visionary, needs to stay and stay and fight and not get separated from what is being done. So as a surgeon, when I was in Washington, at an institute with a number of different people, the busier we got, the more surgeries I wanted to do, as opposed to less surgeries, because I have to be in the trenches. I have to be there with everybody else to understand what's going on and to propagate this process. Mm-hmm. Very, very important. So that's an important issue. Now, the next thing on your list, which comes to a company, which is very important, is
this would be the sixth.
Sixth.
Okay.
Is a what is referred to really as the hedgehog principle, mm-hmm. and that can be described in so many different ways, but really it is persistence. So again, doesn't matter if you're talking about it. It's easier to talk about a company, but the persistence of the vision, persistence of the mission is key.
Well, it's very easy to lose persistence the day you get tired or the day you get depressed.
Yes.
The day something goes horribly wrong.